On the night of July 11th, the Israeli parliament passed the controversial anti-boycott law. The law was written in response to the mounting global movement of boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel and profits from its settlements and industry in the occupied West Bank. Recent successes of the BDS movement include 2 Italian grocery chains who now boycott Israeli products. The French company Veolia reportedly losing billions of dollars worth of contracts over its involvement in the light rail projects in occupied East Jerusalem, the University of Johannesburg severing its ties with the Israeli Ben Gurion University, and the German company Deutsche Bahn withdrawing from an upcoming project to build a fast rail between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The boycott movement has also received sweeping support from trade unions throughout the world, artists, musicians, and politicians. And as a result, at least 21% of Israeli companies reported damages related to the boycott. The version of the law that passed allows a person or company that believes it sustained economic damages to sue Israeli citizens who publicly call for a boycott, without even having to prove the damages. The law also states that a company that refuses to operate in the occupied West Bank will be barred from participating in government tenders. As the Israeli financial paper The Marca writes, as a result of this clause, the concern is that international companies will choose not to invest in Israel at all. Many in government, including from the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Labor, oppose the law.
זה שימוש לרעה בכוחו של הרוב הפרלמנטרי כדי לדרוס אנשים כמו אנשי גוש שלום. בעתיד גם ידרסו, חבר הכנסת ניסים זאב, את החרם שלך על מוצרים לא כשרים. כאשר אין גבולות לכוחו של הרוב, אין גם שום זכויות למיעוט. וכאשר אין זכויות למיעוט, אין דמוקרטיה. תודה רבה.
The movement began as a mass Palestinian civil society call and has been supported from the beginning by some Israelis.
My name is Ronnie. I live in Tel Aviv. I'm an Israeli activist, both with the Palestinian popular struggle as well as with the international campaign for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. The perception of Israel is changing in the recent decade. Basically what we do is, in July 2004, there was the landmark decision in the International Court of Justice regarding the illegality of the settlements and the occupied territories and the wall. Exactly 1 year later, in July 2005, came the Palestinian call for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Israel. The General Security Service treats this as a security threat, and they are monitoring me. I mean, not only myself, they are monitoring those who speak for democracy or against the Jewish character of the state. They said this in court. They said this on the WikiLeaks the documents that have just been published. And what they are doing apart from that is actually trying to, in many ways, to criminalize or at least to suppress as much as possible this type of debate. And this is the debate that we should be having, actually.
Israeli organizations from the traditional left, such as Peace Now, and the emerging left, such as Solidarity Jerusalem and the Anarchists Against the Wall, came out against the law as well, vowing to continue to support the boycott. The vote, which passed with 47 for to 38 votes against, was opposed by the Speaker of the Parliament, and was presented as a partisan fight between the ruling right coalition and the opposition. The religious parties all supported the bill, while Kadima, in one of its first major political moves since becoming the leader of the opposition 3 years ago, voted against. Minister of Defense Ehud Barak, who recently split from the decaying Avodah party by creating Ha'atzmaut, spoke out against the law, but his party abstained.
אנחנו מאוד לא אוהבים את חוק החרם, והוא יגיע למבחן בג"ץ. ואני בטוח שכולנו נכבד את הקביעות ואת דברו של בג"ץ.
Barak's party wasn't the only one to avoid voting. In fact, most of the leading ministers and the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu decided to skip it altogether. The Real News spoke with Noam Sheizaf, a journalist with the 972 magazine and a former editor at the Israeli daily Ma'ariv.
This law was considered mandatory voting by the government and the opposition alike. That means that everyone who's part of the coalition, everyone who's a member in a party which is part of the coalition, had to vote in favor of the law, or if he wishes to and really insist on opposing it, he could have avoided the law altogether. But nobody could have opposed Otherwise, he would be punished by his political party. And this is what happened.
Why do you think that the Prime Minister, who clearly came out on Wednesday saying that he supports the law, why do you think he didn't show up?
Well, first of all, those who didn't show up were, among them were Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, Defense Minister Ehud Barak, and several other pre-Syrian ministers. So you would say that the actual political leadership of the government, for most parts, avoided the bill, though it is important to say that if it was necessary for them to vote in order to have the bill passed, they would have showed up. It was once it was established that the bill would pass in any case, it was more comfortable for them not to appear as supporting it. My guess is that Netanyahu didn't want to be seen as endorsing the law, but after the criticism that he suffered for not showing leadership for either side, those for the law and those against it, he made a public statement in the Knesset saying that he supported the bill.
2 days after the vote and after being summoned by an order of 40 parliament members, Netanyahu finally spoke before parliament. Rather than address why he and the foreign minister Avigdor Lieberman decided to skip the vote, the Prime Minister reminded Parliament that he was busy, extending daylight savings time, approving a plan to clean up the Kishon River, and saving a library from closing in the northern Israeli city of Kiryat Shmona. He then questioned the Kadima party on why it decided to vote against the law when it supported its tougher original version. On Saturday night, anonymous activists called for a meeting in a Central Park in Tel Aviv. They announced there will begin a week of direct actions known as Rage Week against the past legislation, the occupation, and the growing economic disparity in Israel. MK Dov Chanen's assistant, Alon Lee Green, spoke at the gathering.
אני כועס. אני באמת הגעתי לכאן כי עברתי שבוע מאוד קשה ברמה האישית. אני הייתי אחד מהאנשים שנאבקו והרגישו שחוק החרם זה חוק שפוגע בי בחופש הביטוי שלי וביכולת שלי לחיות כאן במדינה הזאת כאזרח חופשי. אני כועס כי אני עובד חודש שלם ואני גר בתל אביב ואני לא יכול לסגור את החודש. אני כועס כי אני עובד ואני לא יודע אם יהיה לי כסף ללימודים שלי. אני חושב שלכל אחד מאיתנו יש פה הרבה כעסים שמחברים אותנו ביחד כתושבים של העיר הזאת, כאזרחים של המדינה הזאת. יש עוד הרבה אנשים כמונו שמחברים אותנו בערים אחרות במדינה הזאת, ויש המון מאבקים.
During the spontaneous march, demonstrators threw cottage cheese at one of the military museums. Because in recent weeks, cottage cheese has been boycotted inside Israel as a popular protest against the rising commodity prices. On Saturday, thousands marched in Jerusalem in a joint Israeli-Palestinian demonstration for the two-state solution. In a unique editorial, the leading Israeli daily Haaretz called for Israelis to join the demo, saying this Jerusalem march has special importance because of its timing. When the Knesset is legislating more and more laws aimed at restricting the right to protest, this march will be an important challenge to them.
Occupation and democracy cannot live together. We have to choose. Either we have democracy in Israel or we shall continue with occupation. I came here to demonstrate for the independence of Palestine, but also for the democracy in Israel.
Many used the demonstration to publicly declare that despite the law, they will continue to support the boycott, which is seen as one of the only effective nonviolent measures against the Israeli occupation. This week, the parliament will decide whether to investigate the funding sources of human rights organizations to work against the occupation.